Hello and welcome to today's video, which is going to be every book I read in 2023. My name is Reagan, welcome to my channel. I normally do book content and today's going to be another book video. I'm a little nervous that these are about to fall on my head, so let's go ahead and get into it. This is going to be every single book I read in 2023. I read 102 books. I don't have all my stats put together. Okay, so I actually did end up doing the My Year in Books that people have been doing online. It basically is like your Spotify Wrap. You put in your Goodreads link. Here's what I got. It says I read 101 books, but I did read 102. It's because The Great Gatsby was a reread. My top genre was romance. I read 69 contemporary books and I read 30 fantasy books. My top author this year was Tessa Bailey. I read 7 books by Tessa Bailey this year, and then it listed all of them. My biggest reading month was December, which I did know, and then my 2 5-star reads were Iron Flame and Fourth Wing. Here's the little graphic that they give you that looks like your Spotify Wrapped. It says I read 64,000 minutes, which is a lot of minutes, and it says my reading vibes are a hopeless romantic, which does make sense. But I do have all my books right above me. I'm not gonna say much about each book because my wrap-up videos go into depth about my thoughts on each book. Here's just a little yearly recap of what I read. The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. This is my second book I've read by her, and I enjoyed this one way more than The Spanish Love Deception. Normal People by Sally Rooney. This wasn't for me necessarily, but I can see the hype. Fury Born by Claire Legrand. I remember nothing about this book. That tells you my enjoyment. A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. I honestly forgot I read this year, but I do remember what it was about. I'm not going to be continuing on with the rest of the series, but it was fun while it lasted. The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Immediately after finishing this, I felt like I needed a reread to fully comprehend it, but I did enjoy it. But one day I'm going to reread it and I'm going to understand everything. A Very Merry Bromance. This was my first experience ever reading a book fully online. Like, I read it on my phone. It wasn't my favorite. I don't know why I read it in the middle of January when it was a Christmas romance. I don't think I'm going to be continuing on with this series. The Legacy by Elle Kennedy. This is the last book in the Off-Campus series. Probably one of my least favorites in the series. By a Thread by Lucy Score. One of my favorite Lucy Scores. So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeoma Olu. This one's good. I don't have much to say about it. Very informative. A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a Persephone and Hades retelling. It was fun, but not very memorable. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I read this twice this year. This is one of my new favorite classics, and I annotated this book so heavily, and I wrote a really killer essay on it. Proud of myself. Uh-oh, where did my sticky go? There it is. I read Who Moved My Cheese. This was a book I had to read for my student leadership class in high school. Don't need to say anything further. It was bad. The Final Offer by Lauren Asher. The last book in the Lakefront Billionaires series. This was my least favorite in the series, but overall really good trilogy. The Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. The one thing I remember about reading this book was that I got the 2 main love interests confused. It was a love triangle. I got the names mixed up, and I thought the assassin was the prince and the prince was the assassin, so I was just very confused throughout the whole thing, which is my fault, but I did not like it for that reason. The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This was really good. It reminds me a lot of Caraval, like an adult version of Caraval. Super magical and very complex. Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. Super easy to read if you've never read sci-fi before. Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I don't remember much about this book because I read it in the beginning of the year. I remember enjoying it while I read it, and I remember accidentally dunking it in the water. Too Beautiful to Break by Tessa Bailey. This is the 4th book in the Broken Beautiful Roommates series. The series was just overall not for me. By the way, all the series in this stack are completely out of order, so I read that entire series this year. I did not stack them in order, and I should have had the forethought to do that, but I did not, so my apologies. Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Batsuriga. I think about this very often. All I'm gonna say is cannibalism and check the trigger warnings. The Play by Elle Kennedy. This is one of the books in the Briar U series. I don't remember much. I think it was Hunter. It was Hunter and Demi. There was like a school project, classic hockey romance. Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This is one of my least favorite Abby Jimenez books, but don't be fooled, I love all of her books. I feel like I haven't made any progress. Heartless by Elsie Silver. I read the entire Chestnut Springs series, so the other books are scattered in here somewhere. This is about Cade and Willa, and I'd say this is one of my top books in the series. It's Single Dad, Always Grumpy Sunshine, Small Town. Definitely recommend this entire series. The Nanny by Lana Ferguson. All I remember about this one is our FMC has an OnlyFans account, and the MMC subscribed to her OnlyFans account, she becomes his child's nanny. It was a crazy book. It wasn't because it was crazy that I didn't like it, but I didn't really like it. Twisted Games by Anna Huang. This is the second, literally says it right here, book 2. This one's the bodyguard romance, and honestly, this was probably one of my favorites in the series looking back on it. I don't know if my ratings reflect that. My thought process now has probably changed. Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. I read this A Vine Mess duology this year, and I honestly really liked it. The ratings were pretty low on it, but I had a fun time. King of Wrath by Anna Huang. This is the first book in the Kings of Sin series. I've kind of discovered that this series is never going to be one of my favorites, but it's always a fun time and like a palate cleanser. The first book in the Bridgerton series, The Duke and I. I'm trying to get through the entire series this coming up year, and I'm in the middle of one of the books now, actually. I always love these. I'm going to say the word palate cleanser probably so much in this video, but honestly, they take me out of the monotony of a normal romance book. So I really recommend these as like an in-between kind of thing. I love listening to the audiobooks of these. The Christmas Fix by Lucy Score. This is going to be the first of a series of holiday romances that I did read this year. This one was mid. Not my favorite holiday romance, but not the worst. Dear Monster Claus. All you have to do is look at the cover. That's all I'm going to say. Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I am going to continue on with the interconnected series. Once Upon a December by Amy E. Reichert. Magical realism. Great Christmas romance, but not a favorite. Also, there was a crazy plot twist in this that caught me very off guard that I forgot about until I just looked at my note card that I had in the beginning of this book. Oh, you can't even see it because it's not right there. I looked at the note card I had in the beginning of this book and I totally forgot about that plot twist. A Court of Frost and Starlight by Sarah J. Maas. I should have read this years ago, but I hadn't. Now it's read. Now we're starting to make a dent a little bit. The first book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I read this in one sitting. It was so fast-paced. I loved it. King of Pride by Anna Huang. The second book in the Kings of Sin series. This one I liked less than the first one. Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. One of my 2 5-star reads this year. I did not like this one as much as the first one, and I see the flaws, but I had to give it 5 stars just because of its place in my heart. I see why people like this less. Love Redesigned by Lauren Asher. I am going to continue on with the series. It was like a home Breno romance. Her books go by so quickly, even though they're really long, so I definitely would recommend this. Wildfire by Hannah Grace. This is the sequel to Icebreaker, and the third book is coming out next year, and I am so excited for the third book. This one was good. Wasn't a favorite, but would recommend. Flawless by Elsie Silver. The first book in the Chestnut Springs series. Again, I love this series. So fast-paced, so fun. Small Town, Grumpy Sunshine for each one, and they're all so just happy. They make you happy. Mary Kay and The Homewreckers. That's what I hate. When people put their name bigger than the title, and then I get them confused. Does anyone else ever do that, or am I just dumb? The Homewreckers by Mary Kay Andrews. This is probably one of my least favorite reads of the entire year. It was just bad. A lot of these books I feel like are for the older population, like moms in their mid-30s, and it kind of showed through. I would say that this book is not for all audiences. Kind of thought it was a little bit misogynistic, which is disappointing. For such a long book, characters were not fleshed out. It was just bad. Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, one of my top 10 reads this year. Again, I love Abby Jimenez, and this one is my favorite by her. Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I just remember reading this on the beach. It was a fun little YA fantasy romance, but not super memorable. I love the Alice in Wonderland feel of it, and I love the cover, but I don't really remember a lot of the plot or the characters' names or many details about this book, so it was just kind of forgettable. Too Hard to Forget by Tessa Bailey. This is another in the Clarkson siblings series. This one was just not for me. The religious aspect was a little bit off-putting because of the way it was spoken about, and I'm not a religious person. I just thought it was kind of gross. Things We Left Behind by Lucy Score. This is the last book in the Knock 'Em Out trilogy. A lot of people didn't like this. I thought it was good. It wasn't a favorite, but it was good. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. This is a random break in all the romances and fantasies. I actually enjoyed this classic. I think I could have read it a little bit slower and digested it a little bit more, but I love this edition and I'm glad I finally have it read. Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is one of my favorites in the Chestnut Springs series. This follows Theo Silva and Winter, and they're my favorite couple. They just make me happy. Too Wild to Tame, another one in the Clarkson siblings series. Again, not a favorite, entertaining. The Happily Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. This is definitely on the lower end of the Abby Jimenez books. I don't like the one of us is famous trope, so that's just me. I know a lot of people really love this one, and honestly, it might be one of my favorite covers of hers. Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings, another one that is in my top 10 of 2023. This book I read while I was traveling in France, and it was such a fun time. I think I would have have rated it higher if I hadn't been reading it in short spurts because of my travels. I still really loved it, so it makes me wonder what it would have been like to read it in one sitting. An Ember in the Ashes by Sabatier. This was a reread, but I honestly didn't remember that I reread this year. I'm not going to be continuing on with the series any farther. If you're looking for a fun YA fantasy romance, this is a good one. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This made it onto my top 10 of 2023. It was really good. I need to get to the TV series. Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This is a good book. It was forgettable to me just because I listened to the audiobook. One of the Barnes & Noble workers recommended this to me. I think if I was in a more literary headspace, it would have been amazing, but I just wasn't there, so that's my fault. Kingdom of the Feared by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the last book in the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy, and it was fun. If you're trying to get into fantasy romance, I would recommend this series. I feel like we're more than halfway now, which is really crazy. We're getting there. We're getting there. When in Rome by Sarah Adams. This is the first book in a duet. It's a cute little small town romance, closed door, very short. Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. Ali Hazelwood is one of my favorite authors. I love her books to death. It was so good. I read it so quickly. I can't wait for her new releases. If you haven't read Ali Hazelwood, go read her books. An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. Another one I forgot I read this year, but this one was really crazy, hard for me to get into. It's like a science fiction about if aliens invaded our world. I love Hank Green. The Green Brothers twins. They're so entertaining. They're so fun. I'm glad I read his book. Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I read this on audio. I read it physically. I think I would have liked it more. The audiobook was still really good. It was just a sweet little YA rom-com. Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. This is the second book in the Avine Mass duet. I really enjoyed this duet by Tessa Bailey. Fun time, great summer read. Takes place in a vineyard. Cute setting. Finishing out one of the stacks here. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This is one of my favorite books by TJ Klune. This one made me contemplate death and dying and grief. It was really, really good in an entertaining way, and then also in a like life lesson insightful way. Black Ties and White Lies by Kat Singleton. This was fun, not super memorable. I read it in a slump. It just wasn't my favorite, but I am glad I read it. So this one's just a little confusing for me. Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. I think I rated this highly when I read it, but looking back, I don't know why. The tropes in here are just not it. Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams, the second one in that duet. Small town, bodyguard, and florist romance. Very sweet, again, closed door, very short. Hood Feminism by Mikey Kendall, another very informational and insightful read. Flew over my head a little bit, not at the fault of the book. I think I just needed to be paying more attention. I want to give this a reread sometime in the future. I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. I don't own the physical copy. A lot of people really connected to this book, and I liked it, but I don't think I connected in the way that a lot of people have this emotional connection that really makes it a 5-star for them. For me, it was just okay. Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This is my second book I read by Celeste Ng, and I really enjoyed it. I had to read this for my high school lit class. I annotated this book and wrote a pretty good essay on it, so I'm glad I read it. I think I need to get more into literary fiction because when I really put the effort in, I like them. Maybe that's a genre I need to explore more in 2024. Finishing out another stack, we're getting down to like the last 25%, which is crazy. Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I love this book by V.E. Schwab. It had previously been a DNF, but I reread it. It was so good. Crazy ending, but I love the characters. I love an unreliable character and an unreliable narrator, and this gave that. Too Hot to Handle by Tessa Bailey. This is the first book in the Clarkson siblings quartet. Again, this whole series, just okay. Another thing about this series is that it takes place in a really quick period of time, kind of insta-lovey, so they all felt like a little bit of a farce. These relationships would not last. I read romantic comedy. I read this in like one day, listening to the audiobook, going for a walk in my beach town that I lived in over the summer. It was a good experience, not super memorable. I kind of forget I read this book. I would like to buy a copy of it at some point. Things We Hide from the Light by Lucy Score. This is the second book in the Knock 'Em Out trilogy, and this is my least favorite in the series. Heartbreak for Hire by Sonia Hartle. I read this in a blind date with a book video. Nothing memorable. I thought it was going to be really good upon starting it. At the end, it kind of fell off. The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This book is crazy. Look up trigger warnings, but it was a really good fantasy. I want to get into the rest of the series, but I'm scared because they are really dense. Someone motivate me to pick up the next one, please. Powerless by Elsie Silver, the third book in the Chestnut Springs series. This one is really fun. It's a little bit different than the rest of them, but I appreciated that little break. week. One of the things I remember in this book is the beer. The sun just came out, so lighting changed. Now we're a little bit uneven. Twisted Lies by Anna Huang. This is the 4th book in the Twisted series. I feel like the series progressively got darker, and this was the darkest for me. These books are entertaining. You have to go into them with that mindset. This is going to be a little bit toxic and a little bit crazy, but just have fun. And when you go in with that mindset, they are a great time. Funny You Should Ask by Alyssa Sussman. A beautiful cover. The book was a huge disappointment. This is one of the ones, never judge a book by its cover. Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the first one in the Kingdom of the Wicked series. I did a reread of this so I could read the last book, which I previously talked about in this video at some point. I love the Italian culture and aspects pulled in this book specifically because this is when it's the heaviest. This was probably my favorite book in the series. The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. This was such a good book. I annotated the heck out of this book. It was very captivating. It was like a slice of life kind of, but very insightful because it's a slice of life that I've never seen before. I don't know what it's like to be an immigrant or be in an immigrant family or really even know what it is to feel culturally displaced. I don't know if that's the right word. Divided within yourself and in the outside world that you're in. Kingdom of the Curse by Carrie Maniscalco. This is the second one. Again, this was a reread. I felt like this specifically was a filler book. Probably could have been split between books 1 and 3 and made it a duology. Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. This is the 3rd book in the Twisted series. I don't think these characters were my favorite, but it definitely was entertaining. Dance of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I don't remember a single thing about this book. I'm sorry to the Dance of Thieves lovers, but don't think this one's for me. But the cover is really pretty, so I'm gonna keep it. All right, second to last stack. I read the entire Mindfuck series by S.T. Abbey this year, and I'd say overall the series is probably a 3.5 star. It was really different from anything I've ever read. It was an FBI falls in love with a serial killer, and the FBI agent is on the serial killer's case through these books. There's Something About Mary by Cody Hall. I did read this in December. Another Christmas romance. Christmas tree farm owner meets single dad. I think it was a little bit too long and it was very cheesy, but it was a fun time. Forever and Ever by Lucy Score. I thought this was going to be one of my favorite Lucy Score books. There was too much spice, which is a weird critique from me. Love Light Farms by B.K. Borison. Everyone loves this Christmas romance. I thought it was just okay. Best Friends to Lovers is like one of my least favorite tropes. Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. I'd say this is one of my favorite Abby Jimenez books. Really cute. Again, there's a dog in here, as there always is. I love Abby Jimenez's writing. It goes by so quickly. It's so fluffy and happy and light. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. This was a fun one. I did guess the ending, so that was a little bit disappointing, but this is one of my first thrillers. He just came out with a new book. If anybody's read it, let me know if it's good. You Deserve Each Other. I hated the first half of this book and liked the second half. I can see, I say that hesitantly, why people enjoy this book, but I just did not like the characters at all. The Viscount Who Loved Me by Julia Quinn. This is the second Bridgerton novel. Again, trying to get through the series. This follows Anthony and Kate Sheffield, like the second season of Bridgerton. Great palate cleansers. The Locked Door by Frida McFadden. I did not like this at all. The main character was so annoying to me. Also, the dialogue was just not for me. It felt very choppy, repetitive. I didn't like the writing style, but I am going to give Frida McFadden another chance. The Matzo Ball by Jean Meltzer. This might be one of my favorite holiday romances I read this year. It was so refreshing. I can't speak to the accuracy of this Hanukkah representation, though the author is Jewish, so I'm sure she did a great job. Such a good break from all the Christmas romances, and I would totally recommend this if you're looking for a little diverse holiday reading. We have the last stack. Forget Me Not by Julia Soto. This book was, in fact, something I did not forget. No, I was trying to make a pun there, but it didn't work. This is a book that I did forget. It was about a wedding planner and a florist. Didn't like it. I just didn't like it. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Controversially, I also did not like this. I was expecting it to be a fantasy romance, and if we're being honest, it's more of a historical fiction romance with some fantasy elements. I don't know. It just wasn't for me. I am going to continue on with the next book in the series. Hopeless by Elsie Silver. My sister is borrowing this book. Currently, this is the last book in the Chestnut Springs series. I think it is my least favorite for me. That doesn't mean it was bad. I read it in like one sitting. The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. I read this in a Reading Spooky Books for a Week video. I wish there wasn't a romance in it. I think that was my main critique. I loved the book until the romance set in. I just didn't feel the chemistry between them. I read The Brothers Hawthorne by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I I did not like this book. I say skip it if you're not completely in love with the characters. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. What can I say? This is one of my 5-star reads of the year. Changed me as a reader. I feel the same way about this book that I do about Harry Potter, and that's revolutionary for me. Need Me by Tessa Bailey. You have to go in kind of like the Twisted series saying, okay, this is just for a fun time. The relationship in here was a little weird. It was teacher-student, so keep that in mind. The Friend Zone by Abby Jimenez. This is probably one of my least favorite books by Abby Jimenez. It was just a little forgettable for me. I know I had a good time while I was reading it and I flew through it, but I honestly do not remember what actually happened in here. Oh my god, we have the last book. And we saved, not the best for last unfortunately, but Radiant Sin by Katie Robert. This is the 5th book, 4th book in the Dark Olympus series by Katie Robert. This is a series of retellings about Greek mythology, and they take place in like basically New York. Very spicy. I'm continuing on with the series, so what can I say? That is the last book I have for you. 102 books for you in this video. I read a lot this year. This has probably been one of my best reading years. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you read this year, or if you read any of the same books as me and what you thought. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. I have a Bookstagram linked in the description and my Goodreads linked in the description if you'd like to see any of my ratings for these books. I don't know if I even said this, but my goal was 100 books, so I did reach my goal. Go check out the rest of the videos on my channel. I do book content, so there's a ton more book content. If you'd like any, that is in my channel, you can check out. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye.